The city was buzzing at noon, and Maya's food truck was swamped with orders. Grease popped on the grill, sweat trickled down her forehead, and her worn-out apron was stained from hours of non-stop work. Customers barked their orders, barely glancing at her face. To them, she was just another vendor, just another nobody. Finally, a tall man in a flawless suit reached the counter. Maya didn't bother to look up. She was too exhausted. "What'll it be?" she asked flatly, flipping a sandwich onto the grill. But instead of answering, the man leaned in, his voice low, almost trembling. "Do you still remember me?" Her hand froze midair. That voice, soft, familiar, haunting, sent a shiver through her spine. Slowly, she looked up, and her eyes widened. The smell of fried onions and sizzling bacon filled the narrow space of Maya's food truck. As the afternoon rush thundered around her, the grill hissed, the fryer spat oil, and the line of impatient customers never seemed to end. She worked like a machine, flipping, pouring, wrapping, her hands moving faster than her tired mind could keep up. Sweat clung to her brow, but no one noticed. They only cared about their orders. To the strangers in line, she wasn't Maya, a 24-year-old woman carrying the weight of the world. She was just the food truck girl, invisible, replaceable, forgotten the moment they walked away. But behind that apron and weary smile was a story no one knew. After losing her parents in a sudden accident, Maya had stepped into the role of provider for her little brother. She gave up college, gave up dreams, and traded them for endless shifts in this truck. Sometimes, when the streets grew quiet at night and the lights of the city flickered against her truck's dented metal, she would allow herself to wonder, was this it? Would life always be this hard? Yet every morning she rose again, tied her hair back in that same loose ponytail, and kept going. It wasn't ambition that kept her alive. It was love. Love for her brother, who still deserved a better future. Love for the memory of her parents, who taught her never to quit. Still, deep down, Maya longed for someone to see her, not as just another vendor, but as a person. She had no idea that someone from her past, someone she once showed kindness to, was about to step into her line and change everything. The moment Ethan whispered, "Do you still remember me?" Maya's mind was pulled back in time, almost against her will. It was the high school cafeteria, a place that always smelled faintly of pizza and disinfectant. Students laughed loudly, cliques filled tables, and the noise felt like a wall. But at one corner, always the same corner, sat a boy by himself. His shoulders hunched, his eyes fixed on the floor, as though even making eye contact with the world was too heavy. His name was Ethan. The other kids called him cruel names, mocking his second-hand clothes and the way he stayed quiet in class. Sometimes they shoved his tray away. Sometimes he didn't even bother getting in line for food, Maya noticed. Every day, and one afternoon she couldn't ignore it anymore. With her own sandwich in hand, she walked past the crowded tables of her friends and sat across from him. Ethan looked up, startled, as though she'd broken some unspoken rule. "You can't eat air," she said gently, sliding half of her sandwich toward him. He shook his head quickly, embarrassed. "I'm fine," but Maya pushed it closer with a smile. "No one's fine on an empty stomach. Take it." That small gesture became a quiet ritual. Sometimes she shared her lunch. Sometimes she just kept him company. She didn't care what the others whispered when they saw her sitting with the poor kid. To her, Ethan wasn't invisible. He was someone who mattered. And though Maya forgot those simple moments in the rush of life, Ethan never did. That kindness became a light he carried through his darkest days. Now standing before her at the food truck years later, that same boy had returned. Only this time, he wasn't hungry. He was powerful. And he remembered. Back in the present, Maya's hand shook as she set the spatula down. The sound of the grill, the chatter of customers, even the honking traffic outside, all of it seemed to fade. It was just her and Ethan, standing on opposite sides of that weathered food truck counter. He hadn't changed completely. His eyes were the same, warm, steady, familiar. But everything else about him screamed power. The sharp lines of his suit, the quiet confidence in his stance, the way people in the line glanced at him with respect. This was not the lonely boy from the cafeteria anymore. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice breaking. He leaned closer, his tone soft but filled with emotion. "Maya, you may not realize it, but you saved me back then." Her eyes brimmed with tears. "Saved you? I only shared a sandwich." Ethan shook his head. "You gave me dignity when no one else would." When kids laughed at me, you sat by me. When I went hungry, you fed me. When I felt invisible, you saw me. You don't know what that did for me." Maya pressed a trembling hand to her lips. She wanted to respond, but the lump in her throat kept her silent. "I built a company, Maya," Ethan continued, his voice catching. "I became everything they said I couldn't. But through it all, I carried those afternoons in the cafeteria with me. You reminded me I was worth something, and I swore one day I'd find you." Tears spilled down Maya's cheeks. All those years she had wondered if kindness mattered, if her sacrifices meant anything. And now, standing in front of her, was living proof that even the smallest act of compassion could change the course of someone's life. The days that followed felt unreal to Maya. She had expected Ethan to vanish after their emotional reunion, to return to his world of glass towers and luxury cars. But every morning, without fail, he appeared at her food truck, not as a millionaire CEO, but as her most loyal customer. At first, he only ordered coffee, staying to chat while she worked. Then one evening, as she struggled to scrub the grill long after closing, Ethan rolled up his sleeves and grabbed a sponge. "You don't have to do that," Maya protested, embarrassed. He smiled. "I remember you said that once when you gave me your lunch. And I told you the same thing I'll tell you now I do." From then on, Ethan wasn't just present, he was involved. He helped her carry heavy supply boxes, repaired the squeaky hinge on the truck door, even stood beside her during rush hour when orders piled up. Customers noticed the man in the expensive suit working the counter and they stared, but Ethan didn't care. One night as they locked up, Maya finally asked, "Why are you doing all this?" He looked at her, his gaze steady. "Because you once believed in me when I had nothing. Now it's my turn to believe in you." Ethan began introducing her to people, suppliers who offered discounts, investors who were eager to back her dream of opening a cafe. Slowly, the impossible started to feel possible. For the first time in years, Maya's heavy burden began to lighten. The girl who had once been invisible was no longer unseen. Someone saw her, believed in her, and stood by her side, not because of what she could offer, but because of who she had always been. And for Maya, that changed everything. Months later, the corner of the street where Maya's dented food truck once stood looked very different. In its place now stood a cozy little cafe with warm lights glowing from its windows, the smell of fresh bread and coffee drifting onto the sidewalk. The sign above the door read Maya's Table, her dream finally alive. Inside, Maya moved with a grace she never thought possible. She no longer wore a stained apron and worn sneakers. Instead, she wore a clean uniform, her hair neatly tied, her eyes shining with purpose. Customers filled every table, chatting, laughing, savoring her food. They knew her name now. They saw her. And at one corner table, as always, sat Ethan. His suit jacket rested casually on the back of his chair as he sipped his coffee, watching her with quiet pride. He wasn't there as a CEO or as someone who had swooped in to rescue her. He was there as the boy she once believed in, the man who now believed in her just as fiercely. When the cafe finally closed one evening, Maya sat across from him, wiping her tired but joyful hands on a cloth. Her eyes softened. "I still can't believe all of this is real." Ethan leaned forward, his voice steady. "It's real because you earned it. All I did was remind you of the strength you already had." Maya's throat tightened. She thought back to the countless nights she had stood alone in her food truck, wondering if life would ever change. Now she knew. Change had come not through miracles, but through kindness, the kind she had once given freely, and the kind that had found its way back to her. Sometimes, the smallest act of compassion plants a seed that grows into something extraordinary. Maya's story was proof that kindness doesn't disappear. It circles back, often when you least expect it. This story is proof that no act of kindness is ever wasted. Even the smallest gesture, sharing a meal, offering encouragement, sitting beside someone forgotten, can change the course of a life. And one day, when you least expect it, that kindness may come back to lift you higher than you ever imagined.